Hello and welcome to episode 44 of The Thing About Golf, Golf Australia magazine's unending quest to uncover the multitude of reasons that people get hooked by and on this crazy game. My name's Rod Murray, and just before we get underway today, might I urge you, if you haven't already done so, to have a listen to episode 43 of the show, where John Huggan had a captivating discussion with Ryder Cup captain Padraig Harrington. It's been one of the highlights of the series so far, and if you've got any interest in golf, trust me, you will enjoy their chat. Now, once you've done that, I want you to rush straight back here because we've got another treat in store today on episode 44, a chat with one of the game's great thinkers and ambassadors, course architect Bill Coore. Now, Australia is blessed in many ways when it comes to golf, and over the past decade, those blessings have included the presence of Bill Coore at our own slice of golf heaven, Barnbougle Dunes in Tasmania. Coore first came to these shores when building the facility's second course, Lost Farm, but he was back again in 2019 when a fire on the property exposed an area of land which looked perfect for what is fast becoming the flavour of the month in golf, a short course. And so was born Bougle Run. Already highly acclaimed, this 14-hole adventure has proved the ideal place for golfers to warm up and or warm down after a day spent on the stunning Tasmanian links. In the show notes below, you'll find a link to Golf Australia magazine's extensive feature on Bougle Run, including a full review and some of the fascinating backstory of how the course came to be. Do yourself a favour and make sure to read it. As with everything Barnbougle, those in the know are already placing Bougle Run among the top handful of short courses in the world. Now, Bill and I probably talked about Bougle Run less than I meant to, if I'm honest. But as with any discussion with Bill, there's just so much to explore that it's hard to fit it all in. Still, I hope you enjoy, at least half as much as I did, this chat with course architect Bill Coore. The clue's in the title for the podcast, The Thing About Golf, and it's the question we like to ask first up of all of our guests. I suppose it's a big one, in some ways unanswerable, but what's the thing about golf for Bill Coore?
Oh, gee, Rod, I could probably go on for hours about that, but sorry about the chimes in the background here.
That's okay. Yep.
You know, Rod, it was... For me, it was part of a childhood awakening, I guess you might say. I grew up in very rural North Carolina and not near any sizable towns, and so I was an outdoors type kid, and usually with a dog just wandering around somewhere. And my neighbor played golf, and he introduced me to it, and it was almost, as they say, an instant love affair. I just loved the fact that it was a game played in nature, outside. And it took me a while to realize one of the things that I liked so much about golf was, besides the fact that it was an individual type game, which, you could play by yourself if you needed to. And where I grew up, there were not a lot of other kids around. So individual sports were, very appealing, and but it was just also the fact that you got to experience courses, different types, and it took me a while to realize that. But unlike baseball, which I played, and basketball, which I played, and most other sports, golf was on an unstructured type of playing field, and they were all different. And some I liked a lot, some I didn't care for at all, but they were different. And the more I was exposed to it, the more I became attracted to that aspect of it too. It was one of the few games not played in a structured arena or a pre-described playing field. And I don't know. That plus the whole thing of playing a game in nature to me was very appealing, and it stuck to me early on, and I was very fortunate to just to be exposed to that.
Yeah. The impact for some people, Bill, and you and I are probably two examples. Golf becomes our whole life in so many ways. It becomes a major part of our work or all of our work life, and it plays a huge role in the world that we live in and the travels that we take and the destinations that we go to. It doesn't do that for everybody. Have you ever wondered why that might be?
Well, I can't say that I've dwelled on it, Rod, but I think probably like most things in life, different people with different perspectives and different inclinations and are attracted to different things, be they interest in life or interest in academics or something like golf, in sports. I don't know. I think golf is certainly, as you and all of us who play it know, it can be a difficult game to become introduced to and to feel comfortable with, both because of the difficulty of the game itself and acquiring any sort of a level of proficiency, even up to just being average is a difficult proposition. And then, there are other aspects of golf, and particularly, unfortunately, in America, where it's often perceived as a wealthy person's or elitist sort of a game, and that turns some people off. I think, pretty quickly, to the point that they probably perceive golf in a less than positive fashion, even before they might attempt to play it. And so I don't know. I think it's just a combination of factors, but I have yet to meet anyone, Rod, who's played golf who hasn't at some point experienced the thrill of hitting one good shot. And that might be a putt, or it might be a chip, or it might be one good tee shot or something. But one shot that, for those of us who continue to play and become so enamored of it, is the hook, I guess. And that constant seduction, so to speak, of I did it once, I can do it again.
Yeah,
and
right.
And constantly trying to find that and strive for it. But again, even that probably, you could probably look at the flip side of that and say, gee, do I really enjoy engaging in something where I get the thrill of doing something really well once out of every how many dozens or hundreds of swings. So.
Well, there's an element, isn't there, Bill, in that of that, as you say quite rightly, I've done it once, I can do it again, which can also very quickly become, I've done it once, why can't I do it again? That can be the frustrating side of golf.
Exactly right.
Same question.
Right. So it's understandable how it can be frustrating to folks, and to the point that they might not find it that interesting. Yeah. But I think in current times and throughout the history, there have been attempts to try to make golf a little more appealing to a broader spectrum of people. But I doubt, Rod, that it's ever going to be a game that becomes like football or soccer, around the world. There are not that many people get exposed to it, and it most likely will continue to remain a game that's appreciated by fewer people than should be. But those people, as you and I know, we've become very passionate about it. So when we like golf, we really like golf.
There's two types of people in the world, aren't there, Bill? There's golfers and non-golfers. That's pretty much how the world divides, it seems to me. And not all people who play golf are necessarily golfers. That's a completely different track. I wonder, Bill, I think you're right about that, and every golfer will recognise, as you're talking about, that we've all had that good shot. It's a cliche, isn't it? It's the one good shot that brings you back. That's a part of golf, but it strikes me that the other part of golf, the cerebral side of golf, the part of golf you're in with golf course architecture, or if the golf swing might be your thing, or golf equipment might be your thing, or golf rules might be your thing. We all know golfers whose particular area of interest might be one of those. There's a real cerebral thing about golf, it feels to me, that keeps the game ticking over and at the forefront of the mind long after you've put the clubs away for the day, the week, or the winter.
I agree with that, Rod. I agree, and there are different perspectives, insights, and avenues through which people are exposed to golf in different ways, and they're attracted in different ways. If it's interesting that golf appeals to both the analytical side of people who are who are inclined to think more that way, and to the far end of the spectrum, to the other side of people who are maybe wildly creative in a different way, but in more free form and non-structured and non-analytical. So it does have the ability to appeal to a wide range of personalities and people. As it goes, it's just. I wish there were just more people, to be exposed to it.
Agreed.
And then just to form their own opinions. Do I actually like this or not? But I must say, Rod, one of the things I've noticed, certainly through golf architecture, but far beyond that, just in the bigger world of golf, is if you can be exposed to it at a young age, it is a game that can stay with you. Mm-hmm. Even if if you're then busy in making a living or raising a family or whatever the case may be, that keeps you from playing for extended periods of time. If you've been exposed to it early, it's a game you have a very real chance of coming back to and playing. And playing at ages that you wouldn't likely be still out playing football on the pitch, or or anything of that nature. So I think that's one of its benefits, that it does have the ability to stay with you, and you're able to participate in it over a wide range of ages. Yeah,
it feels to me the perfect golf business model, Bill, might be to introduce kids to golf as youngsters. When they get into their early 20s and they go and have families and careers and those sorts of things, they can kind of leave the game because it's a little bit too time-consuming for that lifestyle. Come back to it in the 40s as kids grow up and there's more time on their hands, and enjoy it for the rest of your life. The chase for that youth market, the 20 to 35 on golf's part, feels to me like it might be a bit misguided in many ways.
Well, I think, it's nice for them to to be there available for those in that young professional or young working or family years. That's wonderful. But I agree with you, Rod. It's more important, really. I think that if youth are exposed to it, and then life takes them away, but at least they have a sense of it and can come back to it. And oftentimes it can be extraordinarily rewarding in later years.
Once you can't play soccer or tennis because the knees and the hips and the shoulders, they won't let you do that anymore. Golf becomes, for a lot of people who've never played it before, it becomes their competitive outlet. And they get very good at the game quite late in the life just because of their natural sort of drive. So it's an interesting one. Just going back to that notion of who it appeals to, Bill, it's always struck me. You can have Seve and Hogan are two icons of the game. And one can't imagine two more polar opposite personalities and styles of play.
No, it's incredible, Rod. You're right. I mean, along those same lines, you could have a Tom Kite and a Ben Crenshaw.
Yeah.
I mean, literally growing up together, playing the same course, and being taught by the same teacher, and being complete opposite in their perspective of how they approached it. And Tom being so analytical and meticulous, and Ben being so much more a field player, so you see startling contrast in people's ways of going about it, and yet the game allows each type to be successful.
Indeed. Touches on personality of golf courses too, which we're going to come to shortly. Tom Kite wins the US Open, Ben wins 2 Masters. That sort of reflects their personality as well, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes. Yes, it was. No, you're exactly right, Rod. Again, yeah, they there used to be an old cliche. It may have actually started somewhere else other than America, but horses for courses.
Horses for courses, yeah.
And you had to, as you say, the United States Open, as it was conducted for so many years. With the setup of the courses, you had to look to someone from like a Ben Hogan to a Tom Kite and go, oh, this guy's such an advantage here because it plays absolutely to his strengths.
Yeah.
And then when you looked at a course, whether it be the old course, St. Andrews or Augusta National or other places too, but you looked at those courses and you'd have to think, ooh, the Seveys or the Ben Crenshaws of the world, they can probably visualize ways to get to these pin placements and these holes and how these putts break and how the ball works on the ground as well as the air, and just visualize how golf could be played, and it'd be far less structured.
Yeah, wonderful imagination. I think Spieth has that, doesn't he? Another Texan like yourself, not yourself, sorry, like Ben, and maybe there's something about Texas golf that lends itself to that with the wind and whatnot. Bill, we've been on the phone all this time. We haven't even started to really talk about golf course architecture yet, which is what we must do. One of the reasons we're chatting, of course, is because very recently the short course at Barnbougle Dunes, where you designed the Lost Farm course, the second course there, gee, it must be 10 years ago now, Bill.
Oh, gosh, Rod, I think it opened I want to say it opened in December of 2010.
Yeah.
I'm testing my memory here, but which is not necessarily very good at any point in time, but it's, I think it's been 11 years.
I think you're right as well. So, of course, Boogle Run just recently opened. The short course at that complex. There's a bit of a trend towards these short courses, it seems, Bill. Pinehurst has one now, I think. Pebble Beach, I think Tiger Woods' effort there at Pebble Beach just opened recently. They're not uncommon in this modern era. What's the notion about the short course? What are they for? And then we might talk specifically a bit about Boogle Run and what you've done down there.
Well, to the broader point, I guess, Rod, I'm prejudiced in this statement, but I think so much of today's emphasis on short courses, par 3 courses particularly, but even some hybrid courses that may have more par 3s than 4s and, that sort of thing. Personally, I just track it right back to Mike Kaiser, the founder of Bandon Dunes. And the reason I say this is that Mike didn't invent the idea of the short course. But for years, short courses were so maligned by clubs and developers and people in golf. Ben and I remember years ago, Ben and I both grew up playing par 3 courses and 9-hole courses too. And for years, Rod, we tried, if we were asked to study a site, and we did study the site and realized it was probably, prohibitively small in acreage or something for a regulation course, but was really interesting. We would often talk to the owners about building, a really interesting par 3 course, or if it was big enough for regulation holes, or even 10 or 11 or 12 holes, we would talk to them about doing that. And it constantly fell on deaf ears. Everyone, in the 1980s, 90s, early 2000s, they were basically just saying, "Oh, that's not proper golf."
Do you have any thoughts on why, Bill? Do you have any thoughts on why that stigma developed? Because, of course, it's ridiculous when you think about it, but it's very real, isn't it? It's real to this day. There's proper golf and championship golf, and it's not 9 holes or 10 holes.
Yeah, Rod, I don't know. I just would keep hearing about it, and I'll say this, it was rather frustrating for Ben and me both, because we saw some sites that we thought this could be really interesting golf, but in a smaller or shorter form but generally developers and potential owners and even clubs shied away from it. I don't know the exact reasons. I guess they thought it would not be well received or would not be worth the investment or whatever, but that's what you would hear. Well, it's not proper golf. We're not going to do that. Even to the point of forcing 18 holes on sites that really should never have happened. So, but then fast forward a bit, Mike Kaiser, after he had developed had begun so successful at Bandon Dunes, they had built the Bandon Dunes course. David McClay Kidd had designed it. At the beginning, Mike thought that, if that even broke even, he was going to be so happy because it's a remote location. It was site-driven, not demographically driven, and no one knew if anybody would go there. It's hard to get to, and it proved successful. Tom Doak did the Pacific Dunes not too long thereafter, and that became a huge success, the combination of the two. And then not so long after that, we did Banff Trails. Well, all these courses, these are all regulation courses, proving to be very, very successful. And Mike one day called and he just said, Bill, I know you've played par 3 courses. I've played par 3 courses. There's just no one seems that interested. He said, but I think at Bandon, he said, not everybody that goes out there can play 36 regulation holes a day. And he said they'll play one round. They need something to do, the parts during the day, because it is primarily a golf resort, not a lot of other activities. And he said, I would like to build a par 3 course. And interesting enough, Rod, he said, and I think you and I know exactly where it needs to be, because there was a part of the dunes area above the ocean that we had hoped to put into Bandon Trails that we couldn't because it was just too small. The dunes were packed too closely together, and we felt like we would destroy them trying to build 2 or 3 regulation length holes out there, so we passed on by. Mike loved that little piece of ground that was there. He said, I would like you guys to design a par 3 course for me. And, interesting enough, Rod, I remember asking him specific. I said, Mike, how many holes do you want? And what's the goal? What do you want? He said, Bill, I don't care how many holes they are. He said, I don't want 9 and I don't want 18 because I don't want it to be stereotyped and fit some formula that someone's expecting. He said, what I do want are holes that are great fun. And he said, I don't care how short they are. He said, I'd prefer there not be a par 3. You have to hit woods or really long irons too. He said, so you can just, if you want, carry a few clubs and play. He said, but here's the thing I really want. He said, no matter how short the holes are, I want them to be of a character that, and a quality that you could pick any one of them up off the par 3 course and put it on one of the regulation courses here at Bandon, and the people who come here would be happy to play it as part of the regulation course. And I remember Rod just kidding you about, really, that's all you want?
No, we need demanding enough for a golf course owner. There has to be a list of demands here. You haven't filled them. What are you doing, Mike? Indeed.
Yeah. And Mike was so intuitive about what people really were looking for in golf. And, he's always put the enjoyment factor ahead of the difficulty factor. And he just said, no, I think you go find the holes and let's look at them. So we did. We ended up with 13 at what's known as Bandon Preserve. And there'd been many par 3 courses built prior to Bandon Preserve, no question. We had done several of them ourselves, but generally at private clubs like Friars Head or the Colorado Golf Club or Austin Golf Club, where, the members used them. But in a daily fee, for people to actually pay to play and want to play, that had not happened in many decades. And Mike is the one. He said, I think it'll work. Of course, there's so many people here in America that go to Bandon Dunes, golfers, avid golfers. All of a sudden here they are exposed to par 3 golf too. And it's not just, second rate golf. It's real golf, just on a smaller scale. And it hit, Mike set up the position to create a product that would strike a chord, I think, in the best of golfers, the most avid of golfers, as well as those of us who play more for fun. And it, as I say, the rest is history. It became so successful, and suddenly people around I'm just speaking in the U.S. now, Rod, but people around the U.S., other developers, other golf courses start saying, hey, this seems like this is appealing to a lot of people. And pretty soon you start seeing a lot of other par 3s crop up in places like Pinehurst, the Cradle, and of course, Mike's own project up at Sand Valley in Wisconsin. And they seem to be happening on a regular basis now, Rod, and being extremely well received, especially where they're on sites that are, that feel like can produce quality golf. And they're at situations where there's regulation golf that's really interesting, but also there's the sister course, or the shorter course, maybe, so to speak, that are proving to be just as interesting and just as popular. Not just in America, but in different places. Boogle Run is the example that you and I certainly are so well aware of in Australia, there at Lost Farnham. And I can only hope that Boogle Run will have a similar impact to people's perspectives of short course golf in Australia as say Bandon Preserve and the Cradle and these other courses are having in the U.S.
The potential for that for golf more broadly is enormous, isn't it, Bill? We see, and I wanted to bring you to this topic at some point. We'll just leave Boogle Run for a moment. Public golf here in Australia and in certain parts of the US and certainly in Canada, and we've seen even in parts of Scotland, public golf courses under pressure. As cities grow, land becomes more and more valuable, large tracts of land taken up by golf under threat. Now, whilst nobody wants to see golf disappear from municipalities, there may be occasions where a short course like you're talking about, not an afterthought, not a put, tees here and tees there at 150 yards, have 9 of them and call it a golf course, but well thought out, 8, 12, 15, 9, 10, doesn't matter how many holes, well thought out, proper golf, to use the term in some ways, might have its place in there, do you think?
Absolutely, Rod. Absolutely, and that's what I'm hoping. I know Ben's hoping. A lot of us in the world of golf are hoping that this idea that's now all of a sudden, this is quite proper golf. It's just on a different scale.
Yeah.
And if you can take that concept, where could it be more valuable than around municipalities and places that maybe have some tracts of land, sometimes perhaps very interesting tracts from a golf perspective, but tracts of land that are too small for a regulation course, too small even perhaps for a 9-hole regulation course, but are in a location that could be appealing to many, many people who live in the area. And yes, so all these different concepts, forms of golf that we're starting to see, I'm hugely in favor. And as Mike Kaiser said with Bandon Preserve, it doesn't have to be 9 holes. It doesn't have to be 18. It could be whatever.
Whatever fits.
We often forget the old course at St. Andrews was 12 one time, and then 22.
That's exactly right.
So golf presented in a really interesting fashion. Does it have to be a prescribed number of holes? Would you rather have 14 or 11 or even 8? really interesting holes versus 18. Well, they crammed them in there just to get to 18.
Yeah.
I think the interest should supersede the formula.
Yeah. You'd be familiar with an old friend of mine and one of the more interesting people in the world of course architecture from Iceland, Edwin Roald, who has a website called Why 18 Holes and has written extensively about the obsession with 18 holes over time, really hurting golf in a lot of ways. And you touched on it yourself there, people who insist on building 18 holes because it's seen as the only thing marketable, even when it's not the best thing for the golf. And Mike Kaiser proves that if you put the golf first, it's a business formula for success, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is. He has proven so many things, but the fact that golfers, whether they're perhaps aware or not, they seem very much attracted to the origins of golf, meaning golf by the sea, golf in sand, golf on interesting contours, golf that's fun. That doesn't mean it's easy, but it's fun.
Interesting.
And he's so tuned into that, and thank goodness for that, because now it's having an impact literally around the world.
Indeed.
And I remember talking to Richard Sadler about to go out there and lay out some little holes, some short holes up in the big dunes there at Lost Farm and above the existing course. And Richard was the same, as Mike. He said, Bill, it's no preconceived number. I don't care. Whatever it should be, whatever the land wants to give in terms of the number of holes. As long as they're interesting, they're a complement to the two courses here at Barnbougle, and people will enjoy it. He said it's a different form of golf that I think we should offer. Yep. And that's all you can ask for, Rod, from an owner, is to give you the freedom to discover something, particularly if it's an interesting piece of land, and let the land guide the process. And, so Boogle Run, 14 holes.
14, that's right. And getting rave, we won't go too much into the detail of it, Bill, and I don't think you've seen it yet because of COVID and the inability to travel. You haven't seen the finished product, I'm fairly certain, but getting excellent reviews from people whose opinion I value, who've been down and seen it. I haven't been lucky enough to yet, but I'll rectify that in the not too distant future, so congratulations on that. I want to go just duck down a little rabbit hole here, Bill, and then I want to come back to some of those issues that you raised there. When the game of golf looks back in 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 years, the names Coore, Crenshaw, Doak, Gil Hands, David McClay, Kidd, Mike Clayton, Ogilvy, Cocking, Mead, some others, will get a lot of credit for being a part of a movement of golf towards moving away from some of the things we saw in the 80s and 90s. Included in that list should be the names Kaiser, Sattler and Youngscap, should they not, Bill? The gift that these men have given the game might be more important than the opportunities that you designers have created from that. Do you think I'm right about that?
Oh, 100%. If there's such a thing as more than 100%, you're correct, Rod. It's, it's one thing to think about those of us in the design profession and the folks that you mentioned and others too, numerous others currently, young people, a lot of folks that you probably haven't yet heard of that much, who are so talented and just starting to do such beautiful work. And yet, if it weren't for the opportunities, you can have all the talent in the world.
Yep.
As a designer, you can have great talent. You could even have experience. And you can have all sorts of ideas. But until somebody gives you the opportunity to express those ideas, nothing's going to come of it.
Yep.
And Mike Kaiser, Dick Youngscap, Richard Sattler, and others around the world who are envisioning golf now in this sense more of the enjoyable, the interesting and the enjoyable, versus more than the difficulty and the photogenic sides of it. They're giving opportunities to people like us to do what we would love to do. But I remember Tom Doak. Tom Doak, I'll just focus on Tom. I've known him for so long. But Tom Doak will go down in history as one of the truly great golf designers in the history of the profession. There's no question about that. But Tom Doak, even for those of us who knew Tom prior to Pacific Dunes, we knew the talent he had. We knew that at some point we were all hoping for Tom, that talent would come face to face with the opportunity, because he had the talent, he had the preparation, and he'd been given some opportunities, but not the world, just the opportunity that could change golf architecture. Mike Kaiser gave him that at Pacific Dunes, and as they say, the rest is history. It's what Dick Youngscap did at the Sandhills, and by saying, hey, everyone's trying to do demographically driven golf development. Go to the population centers, go where the people are. Dick went the exact opposite way and say, I believe that the best golf would be site driven instead of demographically driven. I think if you find a really interesting site, you could build a course that people might actually come to see. That was, you put in the context of when that happened in 1990, 91, 92.
Yeah.
That was a pretty foreign idea.
Yeah.
And so you put Dick together with the demographics, the site-driven aspects, and Mike Kaiser, on top of that in there with both believing in site-driven projects, but also in making sure they were accessible to the public. Mm-hmm. They weren't the private clubs. They weren't accessible to only the few. They were open. They were welcoming to people. And Mike believed so strongly in that. So he married the site-driven concept with the public access concept. And then, of course, in Australia, Richard Sadler, who, of course, loves to say, he was just a potato farmer and all that. Richard's one of the brightest guys you'll ever meet, and one of the most astute and observing people you'll ever meet. And he, I know when Tom and Michael Clayton did Barn Boogle Dunes, that was a leap of faith. It was a huge leap of faith on Richard's part.
A non-golfer.
And even
didn't even play the game at the time.
Exactly. And yet Richard, I remember well what Richard was, when people were telling him, you could do this, could be fantastic, you should do this, and he's going, Bill, I don't even play golf. But he went out and he went to Bandon Dunes and he observed and he studied what was happening there. He spent time with Mike Kaiser, and Mike encouraged him, Richard, this could work at your site. I've seen your site. This could work. And huge leap of faith on Richard and Sally Sattler's part, to get to undertake that, and yet again, as they say, it's history. You see what's happened, and it just proves again, I think, Ron, that if it's really good, interesting golf, people will find it, and they will appreciate it, and I'm excited about the contemporary phase that golf development's in, because it does seem to be going more that way, to facilities that are accessible to people, and facilities that are based upon sites that are conducive to really interesting golf. But then not everyone, like they did for so long, trying to go out and build the hardest golf course they can to get the highest slope rating, to try to attract some kind of a professional competition. That's all well and good. There should be those courses. But this idea that now there's more of the old old school from many, many years ago, back in play as far as golf development.
Yeah, and we're seeing the LPGA go to a few of those courses in recent years, Bill, and it's been fabulous to watch those truly elite players play that old school type of golf, including just at Wilshire Country Club just last week to date where we are. Could you imagine being the accountant for any three of those men, Bill? All of their accountants would have told them explicitly, this is a stupid idea. You can't build a golf course in the middle of nowhere and spend millions of dollars doing it and expect it to make money, and don't blame me when the whole thing's a disaster. It's madness. And yet they've proved, have they not, the business case, as you've just laid out, for focusing on the golf. And the golf business often gets distracted by other things, I think. And if we spent more time focusing on just the golf, COVID's proved it, hasn't it, Bill? People have come back to the game for the golf, not for the big clubhouses, not for the beer cart, not for the quality of the grass, not for the cart paths or any of that stuff. They've come back for the golf, and we so often go away from that in this game, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so often, Rod, golf has been used for other purposes. You know, quite frankly, with regard to real estate, golf was used for decades to sell real estate. And oftentimes the golf that was created was not capable of standing on its own if the real estate had not been involved and of helping to support it. And oftentimes the real estate was not capable of standing on its own if the golf hadn't been there to help sell it. So if one of them, I've always believed, if one of those two elements, real estate or golf, is not able to measure up on its own and be successful on its own without the other, when you put the two together, they're going to fail. But if they can are both capable of being, successful on their own, you put them together, generally that's a success. But that's off on the tangent, Rod. But it's, golf was used so much to sell, and quite frankly, there was too much golf built. There's a belief that everybody, like 20% of the world, was going to play golf. Well, that wasn't going to happen and likely never will. But golf is back, and COVID has been as insensitive as it sounds. It's a horrible thing to say, given the tragedies brought on by COVID. But in spite of that, in our insular, often insular world of golf, it's had a lot of positive impacts.
I'll say it for you, Bill. Yeah. It's the best thing that's happened to the game in 25 years from a business standpoint. And you're right, all of that. We'd prefer that golf was still struggling and COVID hadn't happened. But the truth is, and it's interesting to try to extrapolate why that's the case, it is the best thing. You cannot get a tee time at a public golf course in Sydney. You cannot get.
No.
Good luck. That's how busy the courses are.
No, I know. I had a friend tell me a couple of days ago, he was, I had another guy who I met last week, a very wealthy guy. And he said, Bill, I'm trying to go to Bandon Dunes with eight or nine, I guess it was, of our friends to play golf. And he said, they're sold out for the entire year. Yeah. We can't get in.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's all over.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's the same.
Which brings us neatly to a couple of things, Bill. And one that I want to ask you about in particular, the responsibility of golf course architects in all of this and the ongoing health of the game. Do you feel... I can't imagine that you stand on a site like Lost Farm or Bandon Trails or Bandon Preserve or any of the other many golf courses, wonderful golf courses that you've been a part of designing and building, and think to yourself, what's this going to do for the, for the overall sort of good of the game? But does the question make sense? What's the responsibility of architecture? I think most who have an interest in architecture will have been to Scotland. And I think most who've been to Scotland have had the light bulb moment experience. It certainly happened for me, and it's happened to loads of others I know, and it probably happened for you at some point as well, where you just stand on a course and go, this is what it's supposed to be about. And that's when you fall in love with the game the way we have. So what responsibility does the architect have in the modern game for helping people find that light bulb moment outside of Scotland at places like Barnbougle Dunes, which is an incredibly important development in so many ways, not the least of it being that it's public access. Do you feel that? Do you ever think about that?
Well, I do, Rod. I think I imagine most of us in this profession do at some point in time, because you're hoping to create courses that that appeal to people, and not just the best players, not necessarily just the worst players, but appeal to as broad a spectrum as possible. That's easy to say, very hard to do, but you'd like to create landforms and experiences within those landforms that are memorable for the people who are going to experience it, who are going to play the courses. And I guess most of all, and it sounds like I'm like just so focused on Mike Kaiser here. I don't necessarily mean to, but he's been so incredibly influential. He also was said, a golf writer asked him some years ago, saying, what's your definition of a great golf course? Now, we used to hear all sorts of definitions, Rod, it's got all these shot values, it's this, it's that, it's got balance of left to right, right? You go through all this analytical criteria and measurements and all this stuff. Mike just simply, when they asked him the question, he just simply said, I think a great golf course is one you walk off the 18th green, you want to go immediately to the first tee and do it again.
Yep.
And, that's so concise, and it just pretty much sums up, at least from my perspective, what we're trying to create. We're trying to go out there and build, create, or bring to life a golf course that has enough interest and inspiration and provides enough enjoyment that you just want to keep playing.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to walk off the 18th green and go the first tee and do it again.
Start again. Yeah.
And who cares how long it is? Who cares what the number of holes are? Who cares? I mean, it's wonderful to have championship venues, and it's wonderful to have all these things. But really, I see the golf media rankings and things, and which we have been extraordinarily. They have extraordinarily benefited us, I guess. We've been blessed to have a lot of courses that they seem to really appreciate. But at the same time, why isn't there a ranking of the most enjoyable golf courses?
Yeah, the 50 most fun
in Australia. Yeah, or something.
Yeah.
It's what are we creating these things for? Mm-hmm. And as you started this, for me personally, that's at this point in my life, that to me is the priority.
Yeah. Brings me to mind of another question, Bill. I asked this question of Bob Harrison. He came and sat in the studio with me, which was fantastic. I would love to be able to sit down with you in person one day, hopefully maybe down at Barnbougle. I think we had this discussion last time we spoke as well. Perhaps one day we could do that. I asked him this question. I think he gave him a bit of pause for thought. Does golf belong everywhere? Have you had sites where you've said no to building a golf course, not because the land didn't lend itself to building good golf or any of those sorts of things, but because the game just doesn't belong there? I often watch the desert swing, and I know it's more complex than the simple way I'm going to put this. I often watch the desert swing of the US Tour each year, and I think to myself, at so many levels, what a poor ad that is for the game. Any non-golfer who might be inclined to think the game was an environmental disaster couldn't help but look at those strips of green in the desert and say, really? Really? That's what belongs in that place? Does golf belong everywhere? And have you encountered sites where you've said, look, golf shouldn't be there? We know that there's been contentious sites in Scotland that you've been a part of. I think the Cool Links project there is meeting and has met with some of that sort of resistance. Does that make sense what I'm asking there? Is it okay just because we're golfers to say, look, it doesn't matter what the land is, we should build a golf course on it because golf is good?
Yeah, no, I think, Rod, I think you're right. I mean, obviously, just from a more narrow perspective of sites, we've looked at numerous sites through the years that you just go, where the developer, the owner is just determined to build a golf course, and you just go, you really just shouldn't do it. You just shouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. If you're not careful, you're going to spend a huge amount of money and build a bad golf course, and that's not really the goal, I don't think. And but that's from the more narrow perspective of individual sites. Yes, I mean, I think there are places that golf. I could certainly understand your perspective of desert golf because desert golf is presented in such a way that it looks like a botanical garden laid down in the middle of the desert. But if you were to come, to Arizona and not play the tourist venues, but play some of the little muni courses and public course, things that are pretty much just bare bones golf and not highly, presented in terms of color or grass or inputs of chemicals and fertilizer and things into grass to make them look so good. Then you look at it and go, there are people here too. Mm-hmm. And there are people who moved here who love golf, and there are people who were exposed to it here, oftentimes on these little, very hard scrabble type courses that can survive even in the desert environment with minimal amounts of water and inputs and things, and yet it provides golf, and oftentimes very interesting golf. But when it's then presented to look a certain way to attract people from afar to come, that's when it gets to what you were describing. Like, if you're not careful, you're creating the poster children for every argument against golf.
Yeah. As I said, I know it's more complex than I laid it out, but you can imagine a non-golfer, can't you, just walking past a television that had some of that golf and just thinking to himself, really? My goodness. That probably plays into a bigger issue about the role of professional golf and televised golf, which has been an issue in the game for 50 or 60 years, truth be told. That notion of green and overhyped green that seems to be seen as a great way to present the game, which is sort of not necessarily so. What about perhaps in Scotland? I'm not sure what stage the Coore Links is at. It's an exciting project, and I'm not making a comment either way about whether it should or shouldn't go ahead, but I wonder, I did read a piece the other day from a golf writer asking what I think is probably a legitimate question: does Scotland need another links golf course? Do we need to be more aware as golfers that just because we see amazing land for golf doesn't necessarily mean that golf should go ahead? I'm not sure that's a sensible question I've asked, but can you sort of see my point?
Absolutely, Rod. Yeah, there are many places that, quite frankly, one of the last things they need is another golf course, particularly if they have existing ones that could be worked on or something. I think specifically to you referenced Coore Links, it was denied its approval, Rod, and one of the, certainly for me, biggest disappointment of my career, but because of what Mike Kaiser was planning there and what felt like that site could yield. But I did understand, the people who would come up at the town meetings and things and say, Scotland doesn't need another golf course. We've got plenty of golf courses. But, at the same time, Mike and I had both, when we would talk to the community people and then the other, people in golf and not golf in the area there around Dornick, we would just simply say our goal is we're not coming here to just build another golf course. If we truly think we can do something worthy of the heritage of golf in Scotland, all these 500 plus years, then we would like to do that at least on one occasion, and we would like to just do the best we knew how to do to be something of a complement to that heritage and just a tiny part of that heritage. But we made it very clear from the beginning, if the constraints were going to be great enough that we didn't think we could do something of that quality, then we preferred to do nothing.
Right.
And it was, that's the way we proceeded, and but we understood. We understood why people would say, "Gee, that's the last thing we need here." I must say, I somewhat looked at it though from the standpoint of the Scottish Natural Heritage, which was their environmental agency there. I used to just think, if you think of Scotland, you think of heritage. It just seems like somewhere in there you've got to think of golf. So it wasn't like we were trying to be damaging toward their heritage. We were hoping to just be a bit of a positive within it, but not to be.
Understood. I wasn't trying to suggest, personally, I mean, as a golfer, you can't help but imagine what Mike Kaiser and Bill Coore might have done with a links site in Scotland. I mean, you can't help but want that to have happened. But I just wonder, in that bigger picture, what do you see in the future for golf and golf course construction? And those, you would have seen changes in the requirements on course developers and designers and the environmental what's the word I'm looking for? The rules and regulations that you need to adhere to. You would have seen those changing over time. What does the future look like, do you think, Bill?
Well, I'm hopeful, Rod. And Rod, first, I'm going to interject here. If you hear heavy breathing in the background, our 13-and-a-half-year-old Springer Spaniel just walked up all the steps to come up here, and she is just panting away.
Good on her. What's her name? Give her a pat for me.
Yeah, I will. She's now decided to lie down next to my chair.
Wonderful.
And there's quite the heavy breathing going on here, so it's it might not be what you're thinking.
Understood, Bill. Indeed.
But, yeah. So, but no, it has changed, and it's changed for the better. Ron, the fact that there is an awareness of, and a much greater awareness of how golf fits into the environment, how golf fits onto what's happening on this planet. They can coexist, and they can, for all those hundreds of years, they coexisted quite nicely with little impact from the golf toward the planet, negative impact I'm talking about. And then all of a sudden, or over a period of time, we in the golf world changed golf, and we changed it to fit a different type of a concept. More again, the botanical garden. We were trying to build these amazingly beautiful landscapes, oftentimes in areas that neither required them nor were benefited by them. And it's I don't know. Golf has gotten, as you mentioned earlier, it's gotten quite a bit of negative connotations attached to it, and rightly so. I mean, we for decades, probably the emphasis was on the wrong thing. Yeah. Not so much the game itself, but on the presentation, the beauty, and the visuals of the playing fields that golf was played on. And as that, particularly as you noted earlier, is broadcast through television and around the world, the perception became that that's the ideal. That's what we're striving for. It wasn't the presentation of the old course at St. Andrews, when right. Sam Snead, the story about Sam Snead riding on the train as he's going into town. He looks at it and said, "Look, there's an abandoned golf course." Looks like, and the guy said, "That, sir, is where you'll be playing the Open Championship." And so it went from being a naturally a natural game, born in nature, naturally suited to its surroundings, and to one that became far more artificial and less gentle on the land.
Yeah.
Put it that way, both in its construction and its upkeep. And I do believe, I could be wrong about this. Certainly, if you the attention founded, like there's done, even that doing those kinds of things, world, that is returning more to its root, not the perspective of the game and the enjoyment factors, but how it's a part of the land. It's not some foreign artificial thing that's been put on the land. And if we do that, they should be golf and the environment should be very compatible. And I think, those of us who would say there are too many restrictions, a lot of people say, if you're trying to develop things and there are lots of hurdles to be overcome and agencies to deal with and permitting and regulations of one sort or another, they're there partly, particularly when it comes to golf, because of what we in golf and golf people in golf did decades ago that basically said, we need to be regulated. And quite frankly, Rod, we probably did. And now I'm hopeful that golf can start to present itself as we regulate ourselves. And we're as concerned or more concerned about our impacts as anyone on the environmental side is. And hopefully that'll prove to be true.
Yeah, we need to earn back that trust, I feel, Bill, would be the way to do it.
Exactly.
We spent some political capital badly, and we need to earn that back, and that's going to be... And that's up to golf to do, isn't it? There's a lot of hand-wringing in golf, feeling like the game's under attack. But golf needs to be on the front foot with this stuff, doesn't it?
Yes, and it needs to take the initiative. And, Ben and I, for so many years, Rod, have pointed to your homeland as not just Scotland or not just Ireland, but to Australia as a place to emulate. This is the way golf ought to be. This is golf in a more natural state. Mm-hmm. And golf at its absolute highest level, at places like Royal Melbourne and Kingston Heath and these places that are so influential and so revered, and yet have done it in such a minimalistic way in terms of the way they treat their course, their turf, and their presentations, and so much more kindly toward the planet than oftentimes we have here. I'll never forget Ben years ago played in the Australian Open at Royal Melbourne, and it's back when Claude Crockford.
Oh, wow.
The superintendent at Royal Melbourne. And Ben said, Bill, I've never seen greens that good. He said, they looked like they'd never been fertilized. They were just kind of almost brown. He said, they putted so beautifully, so perfectly. He said, and during the tournament, he said, I asked Mr. Crawford, I said, how do you get the golf course to play like this? It is so fantastic. And he said, Claude Crockford just looked at him. He said, Ben, in your country, you try to grow grass. Here, we try to keep it from growing.
Yeah.
And you think about that,
yeah.
Rod. Think about that. That pretty much sums up. If you adopted Claude Crockford's philosophy and applied it to golf in the best way you possibly could all over the world, we'd all be a lot better off.
That's true. By far the best presented and best looking golf course for any event, in my mind, of the last decade was Royal Melbourne at the President's Cup in 2019. The colours were perfect, the presentation was perfect, the playing surfaces were perfect. Not perfect, perfect for golf. It was exactly how a golf course should look. and play. It raises another interesting notion, Bill, and we're jumping all over the place, I know, but I've realised how long I've been talking to you. I haven't got to half the things I wanted to, so I won't bore you by going to them all. But in a modern era, you've had some experience designing, redesigning, working on golf courses where professional golf is played. Kapalua, the most recent, obviously Pinehurst for the 2014 US Opens, both of them. At that level of the game in particular, and I suspect more and more creeping into the recreational game, golf is much more an aerial pursuit than it used to be. We spoke earlier about Scotland and the falling in love with Scotland, and even Royal Melbourne at the President's Cup at 2019. There's a ground game element to those golf courses and those types of golf courses that makes the golf so interesting and so much more democratic, I think. Talk a little bit about that, perhaps, the aerial versus the ground game, and how that changes the challenge and the interest of golf, perhaps.
Well, I think, from the very beginnings, Rod, there was an ability to hit a golf ball. So, to get it high up in the air and get it to go long distances wasn't, it just wasn't there. And so the game was born again in a more natural setting that, and people learned to use the ground to their advantage to play. That was a lot of the game for many, many years. And then, with the advent of more, I guess some people would say sophisticated, I don't know, but maintenance practices with the introduction of irrigation, throughout the course, and the ability to create turf that was, beautiful in color and texture and perfection almost, golf began to change. And it was a game that began, particularly you'd watch on TV decades ago. You'd see balls played on the ground, but not too often, not as often as it had been in the preceding generations, but you would still see it occasionally. Then we went to the period where if a ball was hit on the ground, it was a mistake.
It's a duff.
It was a cold top or something, just maybe chip shots around the green a little. But you read the old golf architecture books, and the ones even from the 1920s and 30s, they talked about that, the quality courses might have 2 or 3 holes that would require pitch shots to the greens, aerial shots that they cut off. That's the only way you could access the putting surface is through the air. And they talked about how that would that was an interesting element on occasion, but generally not more than 2 or 3 times in a round. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you needed access to, ways to access the putting surfaces by rolling the ball on the ground somehow. And now you think back for the past 50 years, and you almost never see anyone hit a ball deliberately on the ground to get it on the green. Everything is aerial. So it's there. For a long time they flipped that equation completely. You might see 2 or 3 holes on the golf course that somebody might say, I'm going to land the ball short of the green and roll it on. And as opposed to 2 or 3, as I described earlier, where you might have to hit the ball on the green in the air. So now we're going back. It's not anything new. It's been part of golf for hundreds of years, but we're going back, I think, to this idea of that golf can be really interesting and, as you say, more democratic if you can allow people various ways to get their ball onto the putting surface to be successful. I mean, any golf, Rod, to be truly enjoyable, it has to have a challenge, but it also has to have the ability to succeed. If something's done in such a way that it's so difficult that only the very best of the best can ever have any success, how can it possibly be appealing to a great number of participants? So I think through the emphasis that's been put on different types of the awareness of golf architecture that's happened in recent, the last 20, 30 years, but particularly within the last 20, there is this reawakening that, some of these courses that we've counted among the very best and revered for so many years were actually built to use the ground as well as through the air. For that to happen, the turf has to be lean. It cannot be overly, just overly promoted for growth and color and all that beauty. It's got to be maintained for golf. Not for, It's not turf in a botanical garden again. It's turf for golf, and that is oftentimes just as brown, if not more brown than green, and it creates the most interesting aspects, at least from our perspective, and we seem to be going that way again, thanks to people like Mike Kaiser and Richard Sattler and people who are interested in the enjoyment factors of golf as well as the beauty of golf. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see, Rod. But I'm hopeful that it's going the right way.
Yeah, I really like that idea that the turf has to be good for golf, because that is, after all, its purpose. Now, speaking of good for golf, you mentioned Richard Sattler there. I'm reminded that we haven't yet talked nearly enough about your project at Boogle Run, the new short course there at Boogle Dunes. This was an unusual build for you, Bill. The pandemic meant that you weren't on site for the project. What was that like?
I would be remiss, Rod, if I didn't make special mention of one of your fellow countrymen who's working with us now at the project in New Zealand, and who was so responsible for Boogle Run there at Boogle Dunes. John Hawker. John's from Australia. His dad's a superintendent somewhere. I'm going to be embarrassed here that I can't tell you which course, but somewhere in the Melbourne area. Mm-hmm. And John is. The talent this man has is just beyond belief almost. He's not, in so many ways, he's so well rounded and so well versed in aspects of golf course construction and maintenance. But when we did Boogle Run, Rod, I was there in December of 19, and I was up walking in the dunes there. Richard Sattler said, I'd like for you to do this short course. John joined me. He was home in Melbourne with his visiting his family. He joined me in December of 19, and we laid out the course, Boogle Run, 12 par threes and 2 short fours. And at that point, late December, right before the Christmas holidays, I remember saying, John, I will see you in February. I'll see you out here. We're going to get this thing going. We had staked the holes out, Rod. We'd talked about concepts for them, but that was it. I was never able, because of COVID, to re-enter Australia. I never saw Boogle Run in person while it was being constructed on the ground. John would send me videos, photographs. We talked so many times about what he was doing. But, Ron, that golf course may have my name on it, may have Ben's and my name on it. Don't let anybody fool you. John Hawker is the guy who created that. And with great input for the first month, at least, from Riley Johns, the Canadian guy who's worked so much with us, who's now working with John in New Zealand. He and Riley started Boogle Run. Then Riley had to leave because of COVID. Amazing enough, Riley got the last flight out of Tasmania to the mainland. He got the last Canadian Air Canada flight from Melbourne back to Canada. And he never got back. And so John Hawker there, along with Richard Sattler's crew, built Boogle Run. And I have to tell you, Rod, the pictures I've seen on it, Ben was talking about it 2 days ago. He and I were together. He says, God, Boogle Run looks so good. I said, Ben, I know. I said, it's been the strangest experience for me. Someone who likes to be so involved, make so many trips to sites and be engaged even into the finish work and all that, and not be able to do that, but to watch the talent that John and Riley have exhibited there, it's just amazing. And I am just so grateful for those guys and happy for them. And I just had to say it, Rod, because it's his home country. He deserves the credit for Boogle Run.
Well, Bill Coore, it's testament to your generosity of spirit and your authenticity that you make a point of doing that, because that's you mentioned it earlier, so many talented people in this industry just starting, are we to realise how many of them are who fill the role of shapers and fill roles in course construction who've got talents way beyond what that title would suggest. And yourself and Tom Doak and Gil Hands have done a wonderful job of fostering and mentoring the next generation. It's one of the great things about golf course architecture, I think. There's a competitive element to it, yes, of course there is, but there's a real brotherhood and congeniality as well. And I feel as though all of you guys have done your bit with helping that next generation and each other, I think, in the broader interests of the game, and not just the self-interest of Coore Crenshaw or Renaissance Design or whoever it might be. So, and you're all to be congratulated for that. Golf should thank you for that.
Quite frankly, most of the best courses being created in the world are by, quote, shapers.
Yeah,
who
exactly.
Design.
Yeah.
People used to look at like that and just say, oh, it's just a shaper. It's just a shaper. Well, when you look at Hawker can do, what Keith Redd works with, what John's, what Dave actually, what Rod Whitman, the Canadian architect, who's, shaped all this. You look at the courses people are doing, and you say, no, they may have been a shaper because they learned their craft on the ground, not necessarily just on paper. Their craft, and they're showing those talents. I'm very happy to see the business and is going that way. And it's the best is yet to come. The best is absolutely yet to come. And I get excited, Rod, when I get to go see one of Tom Doak's courses or one of Gil Hans's or one of many people's courses. I get excited because I know, man, this is going to be special. It's going to be good. And I get excited being able to spend time. I mean, I think, I'm thinking that at the moment, like when I mentioned John, I can't help but say to Michael Clayton. Michael Clayton is so extraordinarily talented and well-versed. Obviously, he was a wonderful, wonderful player. But far beyond that, his awareness and knowledge and of all things golf. But Michael Clayton, I remember when I went to see Richard Sadler to do Lost Farm, and I was very aware that Michael Clayton had been so instrumental in the creation of Barnbougle Dunes. And I remember with a bit of trepidation, so we say, or concern, when I had met Michael before, but when I saw him at Barnbougle Dunes and we were about to start Lost Farm, and I'm just thinking, this man must surely be upset that he did so much, was so invaluable to the creation of Barnbougle Dunes. He must have thought he was going to do the second course if there ever were one, and here I am coming from afar into his backyard. And this really is probably not going to be very comfortable. Michael made it so comfortable. It was unbelievable, Rod. He came out to me and he just said, Bill, this is going to be fantastic. I'm just so, he would come out and walk the holes in it. And he would talk about this and that and the other. And he made me feel so at home and so welcomed. And so he was so non-threatening that, and when he could have been the exact opposite. And so I look at Lost Farm, I'm thinking, yes, it wasn't Michael's course, but boy, he sure made it easy for that course to be created. And that gets back to what you were talking about. The fact, yes, I guess we were probably competitors. But when I think of Michael, or I think of Tom Doak or Gil Hance or Michael Cocking or any of the guys, I don't think of them as competitors. We're all in this trying to build some interesting products. And if we all do the best products possible, as they say, the tide rises. Everything, the whole profession gets better.
Lifts all boats. Yeah.
So I'm just so happy to be a part of it. Right.
It's been fabulous to talk to you, Bill. It's always fabulous. I've taken more of your time than I meant to. You're always extremely patient. I've got a million questions left to ask. We might have to get you back at some time, but for the moment, let's call it a day. Really appreciate you taking the time and look forward to seeing you out here, hopefully in Australia in the not too distant future. That'd be nice. I'm
so hoping that will be the case, Rod. I'm hoping that later, toward the end of this year, I've been fully vaccinated, and I'm just hoping that somehow the quarantine situation will allow me to both go to our, as we're finishing our project in New Zealand, but also come over to Australia. I so hope that's the case.
And let's hope Bill gets his wish to come back to Australia as soon as possible. And let's also hope that Boogle Run isn't the last piece of work we see from him on these shores. Well, that wraps up episode 44, but I do hope you've made the effort to follow and subscribe to the show, because on our next, John Huggan continues his great work when he brings us an in-depth chat with one of the game's most respected coaches, Dennis Pugh.
Winning at Carnoustie in the company of Tiger Woods and not really struggling at all with any of the demons of trying to win. It was a fantastic performance.
That's next time on The Thing About Golf.